It finally leaked. The biggest insiders in the NHL are all reporting the New York Islanders are working on an absolutely massive trade that would send out one of their star players for a package that would give them the pick that would allow them to draft hometown hero James Hagens. Everybody on Long Island has been talking about Hagens, and now it seems like there's a real possibility this happens. In fact, I'm going to go out and say I think there's a 50-50 chance the Islanders trade and end up acquiring James Hagens. And then when it comes to Noah Dobson, I feel like they've hit the point of no return. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest and really talk about what I think about all that. But really quickly, before we get into that, we noticed that 65% of you who watch these videos have not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you're an Islander fan, you want more Islanders content just like this, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe. It's free. Join this Islanders community, especially on draft day. We're finally here. The Islanders have the first overall pick. And if that wasn't enough, they're also the main focal point when it comes to trades around the NHL right now, as it's very likely that in addition to having the first overall pick, the Islanders are also going to make the biggest splash at this draft. And it's a player, honestly, that I think fans should be divided on trading in Noah Dobson. We know how valuable of a defenseman Noah Dobson is. Yes, he has his quirks. He's still one of my favorite players. His jersey is behind me right here. But if the Islanders can get a huge return for this player, especially considering what he's asking for his next contract, I think they have to explore it. And based on the amount of teams that are interested, the one thing I will say is the Islanders are not going to get a mediocre return for Dobson. If they do decide to trade him, it is going to be an absolute haul. And that haul is going to be what I think they use to draft James Hagens. Now let's focus on what we know being reported today. Chris Johnson has reported the Islanders are engaged in trade conversations with the Blues and the Canadians. There are several other teams involved, but those seem to be two main teams. Although there is an issue with the Blues that we're going to address in just a minute. It has nothing to do with the organization, but some complications that Noah Dobson is adding to this whole situation. Now, in addition to that, we also have an update from Pierre LeBrun that says there's a real sense that a Dobson trade could happen by tonight, given the possibility of a first-round pick from tonight being included in the trade. St. Louis, Montreal, and Columbus are among the teams with interest. Now, this first-round pick really makes this whole situation even more interesting, as with this trade situation, a first-round pick in this year's draft is considered to be not as valuable in terms of previous drafts. And it's definitely worth noting that two of the teams involved in these trade conversations do have two first-round picks that can maybe help compensate for the fact that while I don't think this draft is as bad as people are making it out to be, if you're trading Noah Dobson, you have to make sure there are going to be players in return that you can get in this draft that are valuable. Or perhaps this is a situation where the Islanders are going to be moving up, which I do think is what's going to happen. And we're going to talk about that in just a sec. But first, I really want to focus on two of these teams involved, because on top of having two picks, what really catches my eye with Montreal and with Columbus is they have some of the best prospect pools in the NHL. I believe Montreal is ranked #1 by most rankings, and I think in many of them, Columbus is in the top 10, if not the top 5. And to Columbus Bluejackets fans, if I'm underranking the prospect system, I apologize. I do know it is a very elite prospect system, and when you're trading a player like Noah Dobson, that is what you need to hear, because these need to be teams that are willing to give up top prospects, and perhaps not the top prospect. You know, you're not getting Demidov from the Montreal Canadiens, but you need to be getting top-notch prospects from these players. One of the prospects linked in some of these trade talks has been Logan Mailloux from the Montreal Canadiens. I believe I mispronounced that in the last video. Montreal Canadian fans, be sure to let me know in this video if I'm still mispronouncing that. He's a player I honestly don't know if I really like the fit with the New York Islanders. He has a kind of controversial past, though I'm sure he can grow as a person. Probably not what I'm looking for. Probably for a player like Reinbacher, though it seems that Montreal fans are very hesitant to move on from that player, which makes sense. He's a great prospect. However, when you're trading a player like Noah Dobson, you need to get great prospects in return, which is why I think Montreal and Columbus do make more sense. And in addition, they also make more sense for what Noah Dobson is looking for. Although, if St. Louis is involved, it would be more ideal just because they have the most proven roster player that seems to be on the move in Jordan Kyrou. Although at this point, I think it is a very low chance the Islanders end up acquiring Jordan Kyrou, because it's been heard that Noah Dobson prefers to stay in the Eastern Conference. And you might be thinking about this and like, why does it matter what Noah Dobson thinks? He doesn't have any trade protection. Well, if you're going to be making this trade for the Islanders and you're going to get the best possible return, you're going to want Noah Dobson to sign a long-term contract. And Noah Dobson has leverage in the sense that he's not going to sign a long-term contract with a team he does not want to play for. And that is definitely something that's going to make things more difficult. Although I will note, some people are going to get upset about Dobson doing this. They're going to call him difficult, all these things. I will say the fact that he's even interested in engaging in contract talks right now to try to facilitate this trade is actually something that is ideal for the Islanders. He could definitely pull being more difficult and probably just not agree to talking to any other team and just wait things out. He can go to arbitration this season. He does not have to be agreeable in any of this. So the fact that he's allowing the Islanders to really explore the Eastern Conference, it gives them a wide enough area, I think, to make a trade. Although it does complicate things in terms of the Islanders bringing in James Hagens, because the pick everybody's been really watching is the 4th overall pick. Everyone thinks that is the most likely pick the Islanders could use to draft James Hagens. And Utah is not in the Eastern Conference. So that's definitely going to complicate things. Another team that is getting some notes, I don't know if I have any quotes talking about them. Apparently, the Nashville Predators are also highly interested in this. And this makes a lot of sense because Barry Trotz had Noah Dobson. And when Noah Dobson was his best, it was when Barry Trotz was his coach. Of course, Barry Trotz is now a GM. Would not be surprised if he's interested in Noah Dobson. And frankly, maybe that works just because Noah Dobson's looking for a ton of money on his next contract. And Barry Trotz, with his kind of unorthodox way of being GM, gives him a higher chance of getting that. Also, while Nashville is not in the Eastern Conference, they are more of an Eastern Coast city. So we'll see what happens there. We know the plan for the Islanders is to trade up and get James Hagens. And depending on what these packages are going to be, it seems like the Islanders might be doing that by just getting multiple first-round picks and then moving up in this draft into the top 10. Stefan Rosner has reported, in addition, getting confirmation from Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnson that that's the Islanders' likely plan with at least part of this trade package. I would hope the Islanders are getting more in return. Perhaps they keep a prospect from this trade and then send out the picks. We'll see how that works. I don't think this would be a good trade if it's just a 1-for-1 where the Islanders end up getting James Hagens, even though I think James Hagens is the 3rd best player in this draft. And just leaving with the 1st and 3rd best player in this draft, which I definitely think is getting underrated, would be a huge win for the Islanders. But I think there needs to be more, especially when you consider the caliber player that Noah Dobson is. And looking at what's being talked about here, with both these teams having multiple first-round picks, Columbus number 14 and number 20, and then Montreal number 16 and number 17, I do think Columbus has a bit of an advantage in terms of the picks, just because that 14th overall pick would likely be a lot easier to turn into a top 10 pick than the 16 and 17, especially when you consider the Islanders have a 2nd-round pick in this draft, also have the Colorado first next year. I don't think the Islanders can afford to trade their 1st-round pick in this year's draft. We'll see what happens. This is really interesting, and let me know if you're a Montreal fan or a Columbus fan what you would likely give up in a return package for Noah Dobson. If I'm being honest, if it's the Montreal Canadiens, I think it needs to be both of those picks. And in addition, I think it needs to be a prospect, perhaps not one of their best prospects, but again, a player like Mathew. While I don't think he should be the centerpiece of this trade, and considering the Habs would be getting Noah Dobson, a premium right-handed defenseman, they probably would be more inclined to move one of their right-handed defensive prospects in return. I will note, it does seem like at this point, while Dobson is willing to go to the Eastern Conference, it seems like his favorite team to go to is Montreal. And we don't really know what the details are there. If he's willing to take a discount with Montreal, whatever situation. I will say this to Islander fans. If he does end up signing for a little bit less in Montreal, it does not really make a difference from the perspective of the Islanders. As long as they get a massive return for Dobson, I'll be happy. And you can be mad at him if this ends up happening and he ends up taking a deal in Montreal. But you have to consider he did not have to help facilitate this deal, assuming it does happen. So I'm going to have no hard feelings for Noah Dobson, no matter what happens in this contract. In fact, the only way I'm ever going to come out of this having hard feelings for Noah Dobson is if he pulls a thing where he stays on the Islanders and then forces them into arbitration, really nuking their power when it comes to their rights and really what they can get from him in return. Unless that happens, I will never have any hard feelings for Noah Dobson. Again, one of my favorite players. Now let's talk about one of the last pieces of information when it comes to this. Is coming from Frank Cervelli just minutes ago when I'm making this video, and sources indicated there's a shift in approach in Noah Dobson talks from roster players to futures. And what this sounds like is originally the Islanders were looking to make a hockey type trade for Noah Dobson. We've talked a lot on this channel already about JJ Peterka, and I truly believe, and Sabres fans, I'm sorry to say this if you're watching this, I truly believe that the Islanders would have traded Noah Dobson in exchange to JJ Peterka and perhaps the 9th overall pick, with the Islanders likely giving something else in return. I truly believe that was going to be on the table. Clearly, it's not what the Sabres wanted. That just is how it is. And I think the Islanders were also interested in bringing in Kyrou rather than prospects. But at this point, it seems like the Islanders are in a situation where picks and prospects are likely the biggest return they can get for Noah Dobson, especially considering he's kind of holding them to the Eastern Conference. And let me know what you think about that below. There is a belief that these picks will be packaged for Long Island native James Hagens. I definitely think even if the Islanders don't win this trade, it will be exciting no matter what if they're able to pull off Hagens. The fact that one of the biggest insiders in the NHL is actually using #Hagens and saying it's looking like it might be a reality is so exciting as an Islander fan. Let me know what you think about all that in the comments below. Yeah, this is going to be an exciting draft no matter what happens. And I will say, we'll probably make a video covering the Islanders pick and who they're going to draft before the draft officially begins. But I will say, if none of this happens, if the only thing the Islanders do in this draft is select Matthew Schaefer, and then that's it, that is the end of their moves for the day, don't be disappointed as an Islander fan. Schaefer is going to be a foundational piece of the future, really a franchise ultra piece. If they can't bring in James Hagens, if it does not work out, know Mathew Barzal is doing his best to improve this team, and don't be upset if no fireworks further come. But I have a feeling that it's going to happen. I honestly think at this point, the Islanders have hit the point of no return with Noah Dobson. And then when it comes to James Hagens, I think this is a real possibility. And I'm so excited to see what happens tonight. Let's go, Islanders. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. What a day to be an Islander fan.